a focused perspective. And you got to get them just right so that you don't see the toilet paper in between the two. Or you don't see the roll in between the two. I do that, first of all, because there's still a little boy in me. And also, that is the way we all approach life. We have a box that forms our perspective. It's affected by our upbringing. It's affected by the broader culture that we live in. It's affected by our experiences and the choices we make. And when it comes to our faith, it's affected by the church that we worship in, and it's affected by the history of the churches that we worshiped in. It's affected by several things, but we have this box that is our perspective on the world. And as we raise our eyes to Jesus, we're always looking from that perspective, from that box. Is this making sense? This week in your readings, you encountered three people. Well, you encountered a fourth set, but three people that I want to focus on for a few minutes who connected with Jesus, and they were coming with a particular worldview or box that they looked from. And looking through those boxes, they encountered Jesus who really stretched their vision. He made them climb up out of the box and look over the edge. And there's some things we can learn about these three people. There was a Samaritan woman. There was a ruler from Herod's court. And there was a man who had been lame for several years, who begged in the temple. From these three perspectives, we can learn some things. So let's take a look for a few minutes at each of these people. I want to describe briefly the box that they saw the world through. Take a look at how Jesus tried to stretch them beyond the box. And take a look at the blessing. And then we have one more set of boxes to look at from this week's readings. First of all, the Samaritan woman. It's a hot, dusty day. And a woman approaches a well. She approaches in the middle of the day because of the box that she lived in. Let me share with you some of the things that made up the walls of this woman's box. First of all, she was a Samaritan. Let me explain for you who those were. Do you remember Jonah and the whale? And Jonah went to a city called Nineveh. Well, that city called Nineveh was the capital city of a nation called Assyria. And why did God send one of his prophets to a foreign nation called Assyria? Well, here's why. He brought his people and settled them in the nation of Israel, and they first asked for Saul to be their king, and then they got David, then they got Solomon, and when they were done with Solomon, 3 kings in, they had a rebellion. And a number of people separated and went to the north, and they became Israel, and the southern nation became Judah, and one capital city was a city called Samaria, and the other capital city was a city called Jerusalem. And the folks in Samaria fell into disarray. They rejected God. They followed other beliefs and other systems to the point where God eventually said, I'm going to have to judge you. And I'm going to show one of your prophets a terrible thing. I have these people called the Assyrians who are going to come and take care of you. Now, what had happened with the Assyrians a generation or so before? Jonah had gone and preached, fish guts and all. And they had repented. And so God used that nation in their moment of repentance and what followed and brought them to judge the northern nation of Israel. And the Assyrians had a great plan for maintaining the countries that they had taken over. It was called resettlement. They took the native people away and settled them somewhere else, spread them around. And then they brought people from several nations into the area to settle. So that they couldn't band together against them because they were too busy not really trusting each other. And these people who settled in this area, they became known as the Samaritans. They had an encounter which made them want to know a little bit about the God of Israel, so the Assyrians sent a priest back, and he taught them about the God of Israel. And they were kind of like, if you think of Canadian culture, they were kind of like the Métis, sort of halfway in between two groups of people. And so this woman, her box consisted of the fact that she was in a land where culturally she knew all of the people who had come back, the Israelites, looked down on them. And they tried to worship the same God, but they didn't worship in Jerusalem, and so they were different, and they were a persecuted, a rejected people. She was also a woman, which in that culture made this rabbi sitting at the well that she saw when she came, she expected to be rejected by this rabbi at the well, because most rabbis would not speak to a woman in public. So here she is, I'm a rejected people, I'm a rejected gender, and then she's coming at noon because she's even rejected by her own society because of her lifestyle choices. So this is the box she's coming in. And she comes to the well in the privacy of noon when nobody else would be there, and all of a sudden there's this young Jewish rabbi there. And in her mind, looking through her box, she says, he's either going to ignore me or spit on me because I'm a Samaritan. Hopefully ignore me because I'm a woman. Man, if he has any idea of why I'm here, then he might even try to get some people to stone me because of my past. The one thing I know is that this Jewish rabbi would not drink water from a Samaritan. And if he knew all about what was in me, he would probably rather drink camel urine than any water I would give him. Do you see her box? And she approaches the well, with a little bit of fear of what's going to happen. And this young rabbi says, "Can I have a drink of water?" Okay, number one, he didn't reject her. Number two, he spoke to a woman. And number three, he treated her with respect, that she had something to give. Can you see how Jesus stretched her outside of her box? She's looking up through her box and she's saying, I can't even figure out where this guy fits. So she had to stretch out. And as she stretches out, they enter into conversation. And in that conversation, Jesus reveals spiritual truth to her. The promise of the Holy Spirit, the living water. He answers her questions about worship and true worship from the heart as opposed to worship that's pegged to a place. And then he does something absolutely amazing. Jesus, for the first time in his ministry, reveals himself to be the Messiah, the Christ, God's chosen one. And he does this to a rejected Samaritan woman in the countryside. Jesus just blew right out of the box. And the stretch for her was, did she really believe that this was the Messiah? This was someone who could change her life. And we read that this woman took the stretch. She rushed back into that town that was so judgmental and rejecting of her. And she started to tell everybody, I found a man who told me everything and cared for me anyway. Could this be the Messiah we've been waiting for? And it says the whole town came out. Her box, Samaritan woman rejected. Her stretch, you have something worthwhile to give. And you have value. And I am the Messiah. Her stretch was to believe that. To believe that she had something worthwhile. to believe that she had value, and to believe that Jesus was the Messiah who could make all this true. And when she made that stretch, she went back into her hometown, a person who could walk with courage in the streets and look at the blessing. What happened? That entire village came to discover Jesus, because Jesus moved her outside of her box. Jesus travels on, and he comes to Canaan, where he had turned water into wine, and this royal official comes to see him. This royal official had a son that he cared very much for, who was deathly ill. Royal official, what was his box? Well, he lived a life of privilege. He expected people to bend to him, and he just assumed that he would get time and attention from people. This was the royal official's box. And he comes to Jesus and he says, "Come to my house and heal my son." And what did he expect Jesus to do? It's pretty simple. He expected Jesus to come to his house and heal his son, right? And Jesus challenges his assumptions about life. Where he lifted up the lady, he brought this guy down a little bit. And he said, I'm not going to give you that time. You just go. Go home. Your son's been healed. This man's looking out of his box and he's got to lift up and say, "Wait a minute, Jesus doesn't have time for me? He's just telling me to go and trust him? I'm not used to being treated like that." But what does the man do? He goes home. And as he goes home, he finds out that his son is well, and that his son's recovery started the moment Jesus said his son was well. And what's the blessing that comes out of that? The scripture teaches us that his entire family believed in Jesus. Amazing stuff. Then we come to the third man. The third man John is writing about, John connects with his people in Ephesus. In Ephesus, there were, if you remember last week's message, there were healers there, and they healed. One of their healing things was to dip people in the baths. And John connects that with something in Jerusalem. There was a pool at Siloam in the temple courts. And there was a tradition that something would happen and the water would stir. And it was believed that an angel came down and stirred the water, and the first person to step in when the water was stirred would be healed. That was the tradition. That was the box that this man was looking through. The other box that this man was looking through is that everything was someone else's fault. He was looking at life through the victim box. Jesus walked up to this man and said, "Do you want to be healed?" Pretty simple yes or no question. Do you want to be healed? And was the man's answer yes? No, it wasn't. Was it no? No, it wasn't. It was, "Man, it's everybody else's fault when the water stirred. Nobody helps me get to the water." He saw life through the victim box. And Jesus lifted him beyond that box. He said, no getting to the water, no blaming anybody else. Take responsibility for yourself. And he says, I'm telling you, just stand up, roll up your bed mat, and walk away. And Jesus lifted this man. He stretched him outside of his box. Was he really willing to stand up and try to roll up his bed and walk away? He knew he couldn't do it, but he did it. And he walked away, and immediately he got in trouble. He got in trouble because he collided with someone else's box. It was the Pharisees. They had all kinds of religious rules, and one of them is that you don't carry your bed on Sunday. You don't carry your bed on the Sabbath. And here they were. If they were effective in the temple, they would have seen this man for years. But they could not see that the cripple was healed because they were too busy looking at the man carrying the bedroll. Either they had turned a blind eye to the needs of the people around them in order to maintain their religious box of rules, or they were so caught up in their rules that they couldn't see the miracle that was in front of them. What was the blessing for this man? The blessing for this man was that he was healed. Unfortunately, his is the only one of the three healings that did not bring people to Jesus. And today, for us, that's a scary fact because he was the only healing that took place inside the temple courts. Out in the marketplace at the well, a transformed life brought people to Jesus. In the privacy of a home life, a transforming miracle drew people to Jesus. But inside the box of the religious culture of the day, a transformed life brought only criticism and conflict. Isn't that terrible? I share this with you this morning because I believe that we serve a Jesus who gets way outside of our box. He's going to do things that make us feel uncomfortable as Baptists. He's going to do things that make us feel uncomfortable as Atlantic Canadians. But he wants to do things to lift us outside of our box, to get us beyond our toilet paper rolls. And he wants to do it so that he can work in our lives, stretch us, to bless us, to allow us to be living examples for other people. Not so that we can hammer them with they need Jesus, but we can show them the Jesus that they want. The Samaritans were so happy with the Jesus they found in the Samaritan woman that they invited them to stay for 2 days and teach them. The official's family were so excited by the Jesus who they never even met, who healed their child, that they all believed in him from a distance because of the testimony of this man. Those who had a strong religious cultural box couldn't even see Jesus because they were too busy trying to maintain their box. These are the people to whom Jesus speaks, and he says, you search the scriptures thinking that in them, this is chapter 5, verse 39, you search the scriptures thinking that in them you'll find the key to life. But they bear witness to me. Come to me to find the key to life. Come to me, Jesus says. It's not about church, it's not about rules, it's not about religion, it's about me, Jesus says. I was at a conference this week, and it was really good. The very first session, the speaker spoke about the woman at the well, and then spoke about Jesus, Peter and James and John and the other disciples the day that Jesus said, "Who do people say that I am?" And then he asked the question, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And then the speaker asked us this question: what does Messiah mean? Now he's in a room full of pastors, or three-quarters full of pastors, so the answer comes, well, the Messiah is the Hebrew word that is similar to Christ. It means God's anointed one or God's chosen one. said, no, 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 no. What does it mean to recognize someone as Messiah? It means that they are the one to whom I give my allegiance and my obedience. They're the one whose opinion all of a sudden is the tipping point in every decision, because they are the Messiah. They are the hope. They are the one. And Jesus says, Church of Jesus Christ, for us, particularly First Baptist Church in Glasgow, and all of us who are here today, I want to be your Messiah. I want to be the tipping point of all your decisions. Speaker went on to say that when he goes into a church, he does an evaluation of decisions that they've made to try and figure out what their real Messiah is. Is their Messiah Sunday morning attendance? And they make their decisions based on how many are or aren't in the service on Sunday morning. Then Sunday morning attendance is the Messiah, not Jesus. Is maintaining the building the tipping point of all decisions? Because if maintaining the building is the tipping point, then folks, what's the Messiah? The building. If using one particular text of the Bible, translation of the Bible over another, is the thing that really counts in a church, then what's the Messiah? The translation, not the Jesus. And the church needs to hear Jesus' words to the Pharisees. You search the scriptures thinking that in them you'll find life, but they bear witness to me. I have no idea, or I could not define for you the box that you look at life through this morning. But if you take some time, you can probably think about what shapes your box. And the challenge this morning is the invitation to trust Jesus as the Messiah, the Son of God. Enough that when he invites you to stretch beyond your box, you got one hand on each side of that cardboard box and you're lifting it right up to see where he's going and willing to follow. As we look ahead further into the 21st century, and churches all across Atlantic and all across North America are saying things are changing for us. We need to find ways to do things different. Probably the most important thing we need to do is to make sure that we're not trying to keep Jesus inside our box, inside our worldview, but we're allowing Jesus to lead us into his. See the picture up here? Beautiful day, beautiful sky up there behind that box. Our daughter has an expression for sometimes not feeling a lot of hope financially about the future. And she'll every now and then jokingly say, I'm just going to have to live in a box. Tell me, do you want to live in a box? Or do you want Jesus to lift you out so that you can see the full open horizon of what he has for you? I don't know about you. For me, I want the full open horizon. I want Jesus to be my Messiah. Means I'm going to have to wrestle with the box, because sometimes I'm comfortable in the box. You know, if Jesus said dance this morning, I'd have to dance. And that would be uncomfortable. Not only for me, that would be uncomfortable for all of you. If he said sing, Morgan would shut the mic off really quick. Praise God that he hasn't said those things to me this morning. But when we allow Jesus to be our Messiah, to just lead us into his horizon, then it will stretch us. And if we respond to the invitation for stretching, we will see his blessing. Work for the woman at the well. worked for the ruling official, worked for the man who wasn't even sure he wanted to be healed. It has worked down through history, time and time again. And I trust that this week you will experience Jesus lifting you to the great horizon. Let's pray together.